Hi, I'm Carrie, and today I'm going to talk to you about some of the little embellishments and finishings you can do for your pin towels, both from what I do with the quilting, the batting, and then just some of the fun little add-ons you can use both for your pin cushions and especially if you're giving them as gifts. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is quilting. Just pretend that this block is perfectly square. I always make my borders a little bigger, and then after it's quilted, I square them up. So something like this where my strips were not quite long enough, charm square, I don't worry about it because I'm going to be squaring that up when it's all done. Quilting. Use a thinner batting. You can use wool, wool cotton blend, cotton bamboo blends, 80-20, silk, anything. Just don't make it too springy, and preferably something that's got some needle punching to it. Some of the old-fashioned cotton battings, they come apart a little bit more easily. The reason that's important is because I quilt it just with the top and the batting. I do not worry about adding another layer because that's one more layer I don't want to have to fight when I'm filling it, and I've found that I don't need it, so I eliminate it. For the machine quilting, I really love the Aurifil 80 weight thread. The reason I like it is so fine. And I'm going to lay this down really quickly next to a thread, if I can get the end off of it, of a 50 weight. You might not see it as much in the camera, but if you were to lay these two down next to each other, you would see that there is a difference in the weight and the footprint that it leaves of how much you're going to see. With the 80 weight, I can put a fair amount of quilting on this, and it's still subtle. You can see it's quilted, but it's not covered with thread. I use just my regular whatever color is in the bobbin of 50 weight, which for me is probably either 2600 or 2324. That's what I use. Kimberly uses 80 weight in the bobbin. I think I'm probably going to experiment with that, but you can just use your regular 50 weight and that works fine. For lines, I use there's a little ridge on the presser foot that is about probably a scant 1/8 of an inch, and I use that just along seams. Sometimes I will pick a point and then I'll just use that, the presser foot, the width of it, to quilt straight lines. There's probably one of them around here with that. I will do something where it gets very close together just for different looks, and the nice part is with the 80 weight thread, I can put a lot of stitching on it. For things like the lines, I just go ahead and along the edges, and I might go in the opposite direction. It's fun to just play with and get different ideas. This, it's just a cross-hatching grid. So it's kind of fun to play with different options. So that's the quilting. And if you're kind of leery about starting, I really love this comb box from Aurifil because it's got these 5 neutral colors. And I will tell you that with very few exceptions, out of the 49 pin cushions in here that I made during the 1 month, most of the pin cushions I stitch are done with these 3 neutrals. I do use the dark gray. It's especially nice if you're using a black, the dark taupe, anything like it looks beautiful on something with a lot of red on it. So this is really a nice introduction, but I love this thread. Let's talk about labels. I loved this package of modern quilter labels when I saw it, and so I got some and thought, well, how can I use these? I could use them on a quilt, I suppose, but really, let's use them on a pin cushion. There are 4 different ones. I'll do it this way, although 2 of them are upside down. I just fuse it to heat and bond. Or any double-sided fusible. Any one will work, whatever you've got handy. Use a not too hot of an iron because this does have some, I don't know, polyester nylon, but you don't want to melt it or get it too crispy. For this, you can go ahead now and either use the label whole, take part of it. For this pin cushion right here, I cut this part right here about a quarter of an inch above the letters and was able to turn it under just a quarter, like about an eighth of an inch. Because of the fusible, it kind of sticks to itself. I fused it down, and then I used the Aurifil 80 weight, just top stitching around. For this one, I knew when I started playing with it, I knew I was going to be tight down at the bottom. So I thought, well, let me just use some pinking shears or a pinking blade for your rotary cutter, and a quarter of an inch around, I fused it down and stitched around the edges. And in fact, this was cut with a scallop, looks like it was scallop, rotary blade. So it's just a nice little finish, and I like the little raw edges on it. So that's a nice way to use these, although I am envisioning that I'm going to do one where I'm going to pink at the bottom and the top, maybe lightly across the sides. I have to play with that. And then use the whole thing as part of a label, something similar to this. This is one where I just cut patches with pinking shears and had fused the back, stitch them down, quilt over it, and I added a label that a friend had given me years ago. So this is a great way to use these, although you also should really use them on your quilt because you are, after all, crafty, a maker, a quilter, and a sewist. So love labels like this. Also, things like buttons, charms. You can use everything from, I like these little bulb pins, they're called, because this floats kind of freely down there. And it's just a fun little embellishment, and especially if you're giving it as a gift, it's kind of fun and pretty. If you get buttons for any kind of a button club, same thing. Tiny buttons could be sewn at these junctions as an embellishment before you are turning it and filling it. And I also love pretty pins. I use both the, just some that have a pretty color on the top, but I've also really enjoyed the little mini pins from Just Another Button Company. These are especially nice if you're giving it as a gift or you're going to have this decoratively sitting on a shelf in your sewing machine, in your sewing room, or someplace that you're going to see it. Coincidentally, whoops, this one with the lime, the strawberry, and the watermelon. Isn't it perfect with this? How color coordinated is that? There are also some really great seasonal ones. Where is my, well, somewhere around here, I have a red, white, and blue pin cushion. It would go nicely with this one. So yeah, you can have some fun with the seasonal, and as I said, both for something you're going to enjoy decoratively or as a gift. They're really fun to play with. And now that you're making pin cushions, you have a perfect reason to need some of these, because after all, we have to justify it in some little way, don't we? That's it for embellishments and little finishing things. Threads, buttons, pins, labels.